This is the 2022 Hyundai i30N hatch, and it's really just an evolution of the previous model. It hasn't actually really changed that much since last year, and because this is the fourth time I've driven an i30 hatch in this particular generation, I'm not going to do my usual spiel of the outside and how it looks and the dimensions of the boot and stuff like that. If you want to check all that out, you can check out one of my other i30 reviews. But what is different in this car is a few extra kilowatts coming out of the engine and a few little touchy-feely points on the interior, and that's what we're going to look at today. But just a quick overview of how this car looks on the outside. It has a new front grille, some new front lights that are swooped back. I think actually the overall appearance from the front looks a bit more aggressive this year. In profile, pretty much the same as before, although this premium model does get rear privacy glass, and there's new 19-inch forged alloy wheels, which just look sensational in black. And there's also a new little flange there just on the rear bumper, which I'm sure improves airflow in some way. I'm not really quite sure what that does. At the back, pretty much the same as before, although the exhaust tips are new. Under the hood, and we've still got a 4-cylinder 2-litre turbocharged engine, but Hyundai have squeezed a few extra kilowatts out of it this year. It's now 206 kilowatts and 392 newton meters of torque, but that does come at the expense of fuel economy, which has also come up a little bit to 8.5 litres per 100 kilometres on a combined cycle. The most notable change to the interior is the new 10.25-inch infotainment screen, and it was long overdue for replacement because the 8-inch unit in last year's model was just way too small. It ran older software, it just wasn't up to scratch at all. But now this car has now been brought in line with the i20N and the i30N sedan, and it is a vast improvement. So you can control all sorts of things through this car, including the customizable drive modes, which I'll go into in a minute. There's a sound system connected to it. It's not especially good, but it's there. Also, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto will need a USB cable to work, so it's better than it was, still not quite the best. The rest of the interior is pretty much the same. Not a lot of changes there, although it does feel a little bit more premium just because the plastic is a bit darker and a bit grayer, and that just makes it feel a little nicer. But compared to, say, the Renault Megane RS or even the Honda Civic Type R, this just doesn't feel very special. I mean, there's no carbon fiber accents or stitching. There's a little bit of stitching on the wheel, but beyond that, I don't know, it just feels a bit like a regular i30 hatchback. This car also misses out on an all-digital instrument cluster, which is also in the i20N and the i30N sedan. So, I don't know, I actually don't mind having an analog setup in this car. It feels a little bit more authentic and a little bit more sort of hot hatch-like. The seats, though, are new. They're very comfortable. Alcantara with leather accents, and I really like the glowing N badge on there. It's something that Hyundai have borrowed from the BMW M cars, but it's a really nice little touch. All right, time to see what the i30N feels like 0 to 100. I think the official time is around about 6 seconds. I'm not expecting to be able to do that today because my manual driving skills are not the best, but the noise will be good, so let's give it a go. Put the window down. Here we go. Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. You might have noticed that there were a few warning lights on the dash there during that 0 to 100 sprint, and I actually reported that to Hyundai after I picked up the car, and they said, look, don't worry about it, we know there's an issue, we're going to fix it up when you return the car, just drive it normally. And it hasn't caused any problems, but it is a little bit disconcerting. The i30N has 3 drive modes that you'd use normally around town. They're normal, sport and eco. They work in much the same way as they do in any other car. But then there's the N mode button, which you control with the flag-shaped button here on the steering wheel. And that's a customizable drive mode designed for the track, and it turns this machine into a bit of a track monster because you can customize the engine, how it performs, the rev matching, the limited slip differential, the exhaust noise, which I always leave on full, by the way, the steering responsiveness, the electronic stability control, and the suspension. Now, all of these you can leave in N mode pretty much all the time while you're driving around town if you really want to make a nuisance of yourself and if you're a keen, enthusiastic driver. The one thing you absolutely do not want to have in full-on mode while you're driving around town is the suspension. It is so freaking hard, you will do your back in. It feels like this car bottoms out every single time you go over a speed hump. So whatever you do, leave suspension in one of the softer modes. You will not need that level of responsiveness around town anyway, and it is just too harsh to drive around in. If you're out on the track though, absolutely go for it. I do have to say, it does feel a little more refined in here than it did last year. It's just sort of, it's a little, not quieter, but it doesn't feel quite as rough around the edges. It's still a bit basic, but it's a little bit nicer. Unlike some other manual cars, and frankly there's not that many of them around anymore, this is probably not a good car to learn how to drive a manual on because the clutch is fairly heavy, and even though there's rev matching in N mode, it's just probably not the easiest car in the world to learn how to drive a manual on. So I'd find somebody else's car to learn on if you're new to driving stick. So much fun going around these twisties. The suspension just keeps this car so flat. There is zero body roll. It is so good to drive around corners at speed. One of the amusing contradictions of this car is that, like all new Hyundais and Kias, it has sounds of nature built into it, which are, you know, ear-pleasing ambient noises that you can listen to while you drive around the track at high speed with the engine popping and crackling in the background, which seems so weird to have that going while you're listening to Open Air Cafe or Rainy Day or Calm Ocean Waves or even Warm Fireplace. And don't forget Snowy Village. Okay, how do I turn it off? It's annoying now. So those few extra kilowatts and the larger center console screen means that Hyundai are now going to squeeze your wallet a little bit harder to get behind the wheel of an i30N. This premium model is 52,000 drive away, which, look, if you're having regular track days, that's fine, because this really is about the best machine you can get to throw around a track, no question about it. But if you're not heading out to the track, then you've got to keep in mind Hyundai have done something very clever in creating the N line, which is a genuinely warm series of cars. So the i30 N line does pretty much everything this car can do, just without the insane track performance. So it's a lot easier to live with around town, and you can still have a bit of fun with it. And it's also $12,000 cheaper. So look, bottom line, if you're going to the track, get one of these. If you're not, go an N line. Easy.